Be sure to subscribe for more content.
Ladies and gents, welcome to the BigBC Finance Channel, and I hope you're having a very lovely day. So in today's video, we're going to be talking all about Dogecoin, what has happened to it recently and where we think the price is going to go to, and what we predict will happen to the price today with all the events that are happening. And of course, we'll go through every single event that's going to be important for the price of Dogecoin. So be sure to stay tuned for all of that. And of course, if you appreciate the analysis on this channel and you're one of the 86% of people that watch my videos that are not yet subscribed, be sure to hit the subscribe button if you like this content. So without further ado, let's talk about Dogecoin, and we'll begin with where the price is at the moment. So at the moment on Dogecoin, the price is here at around 8.9 cents. Of course, we saw this price tumble down here on Dogecoin throughout the course of the past few days from 9.6 cents all the way down to this level. But it's good to see this consolidation here, and it does look like people are accumulating. Have a look at the volume down here. For example, we see the volume in this region here is a lot higher than it was prior to this fall in price. We can see the volume here was almost non-existent on Dogecoin, but since we've dropped down to this level, people are accumulating ahead of the events that are happening today. That's definitely good to see. Now of course over the past days since we last made our video here on Doge, we did actually see the prices rally a decent amount up to 9.2-ish cents, but they came back down quickly soon after, and we kind of seen. And that's because we've seen quite a lot of news come out for cryptocurrencies in general. In fact, this has probably been one of the most event-filled days I've seen ever on cryptocurrency. And this was a result of all the events that transpired yesterday. So to begin with, what we saw yesterday was Sam Bankman-Fried did get arrested finally. So yesterday he was put on arrest in the Bahamas. We have the letter here concerning his arrest. Basically they arrested him for different types of fraud, wire fraud, security fraud. But this is a massive development because of course before he was a free man, he was just talking around everywhere, but now he's been placed under arrest and things are moving quite swiftly for that. So if anything transpires from this, for example, if FTX has to do something that concerns selling its cryptos, then that's going to move the prices of cryptos, including Dogecoin here. Of course, FTX wasn't so close to Dogecoin as it was with other cryptos such as Solana, but nonetheless, events from the arrest of Sam Bankman-Fried could transpire into the crypto market and change some of the prices for better or for worse. So that's one of the first things that I'm going to keep keeping on top of this arrest of Sam Bankman-Fried and what goes down with that. And so the next big news event that came out yesterday was also about Binance. And basically, yesterday there was a news article that came out of Binance suggesting that they were under investigation for some type of fraud. And basically they've hit the headlines here on Twitter. And the CEO of Binance, CZ Binance, has stepped in to say that this is completely false. This is just FUD. And you can see here, for example, he's been defending himself with quite a lot of tweets over the past few hours. But nonetheless, there is still a lot of FUD going around on Twitter about Binance, them being insolvent, them committing fraud, etc., etc. And we can see that as the price of BNB has managed to plunge around 2.7% from 24 hours ago. I do believe it's recovered a little bit since this was around 4% a little bit earlier on, but nonetheless we've seen cryptos plunge because of that Binance FUD, and on Dogecoin that kind of correlated with this period here where the prices started coming down. So we've got that Binance FUD that's going on, we've got the arrest of Sam Bankman-Fried, and everything's looking very hot here at crypto at the moment. And on top of everything else, probably the most important event that we got to keep our eyes on is the inflation rate data that's coming out in literally about 3 hours from making this video right now. So literally inflation rate data coming out in 3 hours. So if this is the 1 hour chart, what I'd expect is the prices to be fairly steady, fairly smooth, and then when that inflation rate data hits, we're going to see a lot of volatility on the markets. We don't know which way the prices are going to go until we get that inflation data come out, but when they do, it should move Dogecoin quite a lot. So what I like to do with the inflation rate data is go on a website called tradingeconomics.com. This is the best way, in my opinion, to get inflation rate data as it comes out in real time. And basically, if you go on the website, they have this calendar. So if you go to the top of the tabs here, you're just going to select calendar and you're just going to go on today's date, December the 13th. And of course, if you scroll down, you can see at 2:30 p.m. my time, we've got core inflation rate and inflation rate. We want to watch both because they're both equally as important. And we've got several columns. So these three are going to be the ones that we're looking at: the consensus, the previous, and the actual. And the previous core inflation rate here was 6.3%. And the previous inflation rate was 7.7%. And what we have here is a professional consensus of what they think the core inflation rate and the normal inflation rate is going to be. And that is 6.1 for core and 7.3% for the normal inflation rate. So basically how that ties in to when this inflation data comes out is if this value here is higher than the consensus, that is going to be bearish. If the value there is lower than the consensus, that is going to be bullish. So for example, if we get a 5.9% for core inflation rate, that is going to be very bullish. But if we get, say, 6.3, same as the previous core inflation rate, that is very, very bearish. And the same goes for the inflation rate data here. So 2:30 p.m. my time, I'm 100% going to be watching that in real time. And as soon as that comes out, that's going to influence our trading decisions here on cryptos, such as Dogecoin. And of course, we also have something to go by now. So yesterday I saw this, which I thought was very, very helpful. And basically this is a report from JP Morgan that offers investors a game plan for the CPI data when it comes out. So basically what we see here is a scenario for every type of CPI reading, the inflation rate data reading, and we got a probability here and a potential reaction in the S&P 500. So for example, if we get a reading of say 7.6%, then we should see the S&P go down between 2.5 to 3.5%. So, you know, if this number here says 7.6, that is what is likely to happen. But if we got a reading of 7.1% in the very same box there, then we can see the S&P will probably shoot up 4 to 5%. And so this is very helpful for us. And you may be thinking, well, that's really nice for the S&P, but how does that apply to Dogecoin? Well, this is helpful because, you know, Dogecoin and S&P 500 react in a similar way to the inflation rate data. Of course, we can even come up with some sort of ratio as to how they react. So if we have a look at the S&P 500, for example, and we just go back to the last inflation rate data, we can see in this region here, this is when we got our November inflation rate data. It came out much better than expected. And as a result, the S&P pumped this huge 5.5% in a day. And if we have a look at Dogecoin did something very, very similar. We actually have measured it already, but basically when the inflation rate data came out, the prices were down here and we saw Dogecoin pump 18%. So we've now got some kind of ratio as to how Dogecoin behaves compared to how the S&P behaves. So if S&P pumps 5.5%, at the same time Dogecoin pumps 18%, we can say that there's basically a ratio of 3 to 1 in terms of the pump. So if we now go back onto this graph, this chart over here, if we go back onto this table over here and we say get a reading of 7.6%, then if the S&P drops 2.5 to 3.5%, we can say Dogecoin will probably go down 7.5% to 10.5%. And the same goes for a lower reading. So if we get 7.1% as the inflation rate data, the S&P pumps 4 to 5%, Dogecoin will probably go up 12 to 15%. So we now have a ratio and we can really use that to gauge where we think the price is going to go to when the inflation rate data comes out. So just as a reference, if it does pump 12%, for example, if we see that 7.1% inflation data, it should take prices to about 10 cents here on Dogecoin. So what that will kind of look like, in my opinion, is this flat price. We see a lot of volatility. So we see candles do something like this, for example. We see lots of wicks, you know, these the bottoms of the candles doing stuff like this, and basically will eventually, by the end of the day, get to around 12% here on Dogecoin. So, and of course, if we get to this point here in the first place, then that is a very nice setup for a new generally bullish trend here on Dogecoin, where prices can head up higher as well, because of course this was the bearish resistance here, keeping the prices down in this bearish trend. And of course, if Dogecoin pumps 12%, that's going to break the price through that and into this new bullish direction. So of course, very good stuff if we do manage to see that. But of course, by the same token, we can see prices on Dogecoin drop. So if the inflation rate comes in pretty bad, for example, then again, we're going to see this same kind of volatility, a lot of prices moving up and down. But generally speaking, we should see Dogecoin head in this downwards direction if the inflation is bad. And of course, if we went 12% in the downwards direction, then the price target then becomes around 8 cents there. Now of course that would only be possible if this top one were to be true, so a 7.8% inflation rate or higher. But of course, as you can see as well, let me draw your attention to the probabilities of each one. So if we add up the probability of these three rows here, which all lead to a bullish outcome here, so up 2 to 3% all the way down to up 8 to 10%, then we can see the probability of these three happening is 70%. So basically what JP Morgan is saying is there's a 70% chance that the S&P is going to be bullish after inflation rate data is released. And of course, that those are pretty good odds here on Dogecoin. So this is why I'm pretty excited about this. Of course, if that is the case, of course, if we do see a bullish outcome, then I will be placing a trade as soon as the inflation rate data is released. Basically, if it lands at 7.3% or below-ish, then I'm going to be placing that long trade here on Dogecoin. But if we come in too hot on the inflation, 7.4% or above on the inflation rate, I won't be placing a buy order. I'll be waiting for Dogecoin to find a bottom. So prices are going to be very volatile. They're going to head down very quickly. But when it looks like that Dogecoin has bottomed out and we found a good support, that would be a much better time to be placing some sort of buy order. So that's kind of how I'm going to be trading this inflation rate data as it comes out. Now, the final thing that we do want to monitor as well is, and of course on top of that with Dogecoin, what we see on Bitcoin as well, and what we see on Bitcoin as well in terms of price moves will probably be reflected in Doge as well. And at the moment, Bitcoin, in my opinion, is in this rising wedge pattern. I think this is kind of the elephant in the room for most altcoins such as Dogecoin, because if we do break down from this rising wedge, and it's a massive if because chart patterns are not perfect, but if we do break down from it, the price target becomes around 15,400. So if Bitcoin sees a bad inflation rate report and prices tank below it, then I don't think there's anything going to be stopping Bitcoin going down to 15,400, and that would be about an 8% drop. So even if we only get a mildly bearish inflation rate report, Bitcoin, that could be enough to tumble Bitcoin down below this rising wedge and into this bearish direction towards 15,400. And if that does happen, that's going to add a very bearish bias here on Dogecoin as well. So even if the inflation rate data is slightly bad, then I will still be waiting for a reasonable bottom to be formed on Dogecoin before I'm buying longer term, because of course buying the dip hoping that it goes up very, very quickly doesn't work so well. So I'm waiting here on Dogecoin for it to find a good bottom if the inflation rate data is worse than expected. And very, very finally, and another important thing that we want to be watching out for is the thing coming out on Wednesday, and that is the Fed interest rate decision that's coming out at 8 p.m. my time. And of course, this is also going to create a major price move in Dogecoin as well. Of course, what we can see here is that the previous interest rate decision was 4%, and this time the consensus comes in at 4.5%. But to expand on that, at the moment it's kind of a majority belief that the interest rate decision will be 4.5%, but there is a minority belief that it will be 4.75%. And that's important because likely that's already priced into the markets. And so if the inflation rate comes out worse than expected, say we don't get 7.3%, we get 7.5%, the chances of an increase to 4.75% instead of this 4.5% here actually increase. And that is why the inflation rate would be very bearish if it's higher than 7.3%. It means that there's a higher chance that the Fed will increase the interest rate decision by 75 basis points instead of the 50 basis points as the consensus suggests. And the implication of this is that if it goes up by 75 basis points instead of 50 basis points, it means that the Fed is so worried about inflation that it hasn't eased up on its interest rate hikes. And of course, there's a higher chance of the economy going into a deeper recession. So this is why a 4.75% hike would be very bearish here. And so this is something to be definitely looking out for. If the outcome here is 4.5%, what I would expect, so let's say the inflation rate data is better than expected and we see prices pump throughout Tuesday into tomorrow. When we get the inflation rate data and it comes out at 4.5%, we'll probably see quite a lot of volatility, but then we'll see another pump come from that. But if we get worse than expected inflation rate data and come Wednesday we see the interest rate get hiked up by 4.75% instead of 4.5%, then we'll see prices drop even further here on Dogecoin as well. And that's why it's so important, in my opinion, to wait for a bottom here on Dogecoin if you're looking to invest in the longer term, because of course we've got the inflation rate coming on Tuesday. If that's bad, it's going to plunge the price a certain amount, but the information on Wednesday, if that comes out at 4.75% instead of 4.5%, which at the moment has about a 20% possibility, then that's going to plunge the prices a lot further down as well. That's probably going to take the price down on Dogecoin to this level here at 7.1 cents, a very important support level on the price here. And so that is what I am anticipating if we do get a series of bad data come out. But if things are inflation rate is better than expected, then we should see 4.5% come out. And because 4.5% is fairly priced in, I wouldn't expect the pump to come from that to be too much compared to the inflation rate data. So those are kind of my thoughts on everything, and I know it's kind of a lot of information to take in. So basically, just as a summary, even the next few hours, things could be fairly smooth on here until around 2:30 my time, which is literally 3 hours from filming this video. And when that comes, what we'll see probably is a lot of volatility depending on how the inflation rate data comes out. If that number is less than the number consensus number, then that's going to the prices are going to go up very, very quickly within the space of minutes after it comes out. And if the inflation rate is higher than the consensus number, then the prices are going to go down again very fast over the space of a couple minutes. And there's going to be a lot of volatility in general as well. So you're going to see candles that kind of look like this, even on the smaller time frames. And of course, the magnitude of the pump or the dump here on Dogecoin is just determined by how much the inflation rate beats or misses from the consensus there. So this is what we're basically expecting here on Dogecoin over the course of the next 24 hours, really. Of course, I'm also watching out for the other news that I have mentioned, as well as what happens here on Bitcoin. At the moment, Bitcoin has done this nice pump, but will it break down below this purple line here, which currently lies at around 17,000? And if so, we could be seeing this rising wedge, taking the prices down to 15,400 in Bitcoin, and that's going to be quite bearish here for Dogecoin as well. So that's a kind of a summary of my thoughts, and that's pretty much all I have to say in this video. So thank you so much for watching. If this was helpful at all, be sure to hit the like button and press subscribe for more content like this. And of course, I hope this video reaches you in time before that inflation rate report. So have a good day, and I will see you in my next video.